Every few years, there is a property segment in Singapore that quietly becomes very important. Not because it's the most luxurious, not because it's the most talked about, but because it sits right in the middle of what many Singaporean families want. Decent space, condo facilities, a private property lifestyle, but at a price point that is lower than private condo. That segment is Executive Condominium, which is also known as EC. And now the EC market has changed in a very meaningful way. The government has announced new rules affecting future ECs. The minimum occupation period for the affected new ECs will be extended from 5 to 10 years. The Deferred Payment Scheme, which a lot of people actually utilize, will be removed. First-time buyers will get a larger priority allocation, and ECs will only be fully privatized after 15 years, and it's no longer 10 years. So all these factors are part of the new EC measures announced on May 8, 2026. So on the surface, this just sounds like a policy update. But beneath that, it is something that is much deeper. It affects how EC owners think about selling. It also affects how HDB upgraders think about buying. And not forgetting the private condo owners who have to think about future competition and how Singapore homeowners should plan their next move. So in this video, let's break this down slowly and properly. Not as a hype, not as fear, but more like a decision-making guide. So I'm Taufik, and on this channel, aside from all the beautiful houses that I show, I've also helped to guide homeowners, buyers, and investors before you make any major property decisions. And this EC topic is exactly the kind of issue where the headline alone is not enough. Because the easy conclusion to say is EC is now no longer attractive. But that is too simplistic. The more useful question is attractive for whom? And less attractive for who? And under what time horizon? So this is where the real analysis begins. So let's start with what changed, right? So in May 8, 2026, MND announced several changes to EC, which I've already mentioned. Firstly, the MOP for the affected new ECs will be extended from 5 to 10 years. During this MOP period, the buyers cannot sell their unit or rent out their unit or buy another residential property. Secondly, the ECs will only be fully privatized after 15 years. Currently, the time is 10 years. So that means the point where the EC can be sold to any buyers, including foreigners or corporate entities, is pushed back further. Third, developers will no longer be able to allow the deferred payment scheme. Like I mentioned, this is something that a lot of buyers actually use. Previously, the DPS, which is the Deferred Payment Scheme, allowed the buyer to pay 20% upfront and the remaining only at the end when the project obtains TOP. And buyers who are using this DPS scheme usually pay about 2-3% premium over the purchase price. So going forward, EC buyers will have to use the normal payment scheme, which is the NPS. And this is based on the milestone of the construction for the development. And fourth, the first-timer quota will increase. Previously, developers had to reserve 70% of the project to first-time buyers. That is during the first month of the launch. So under the new rule, 90% will be reserved for the first-time buyers. And the priority period will be extended. So the intention is clear. It is to give genuine first-time EC buyers a better chance of securing an EC unit. And more importantly, these measures apply to EC GLS, which will close after May 8 of 2026. So this does not mean that the ECs that are going to be launched in the near future are all having that 10-year MOP. Now this distinction is very important. Some of the upcoming EC project will not be affected by these new measures because it was closed before May 8, 2026. So that is why this topic is more nuanced than simply saying that EC is less attractive. Some ECs may actually be more attractive because they are not affected by the new rules. So the question is, why has the government suddenly put in this move? To understand why this happened, we need to look at what EC have become. ECs were introduced as a private-public hybrid. They are built by private developers. They look and feel similar to private condos. They have facilities, securities, and condo living style, but they come with public housing style considerations such as eligibility rules, income ceiling, and MOP. And that is why ECs have always occupied a very interesting space. They appeal to Singaporean families who want beyond HDB but may find private condos a little too stretching. And over the past few years, especially this year when you look at the launches, the demand has been really very strong. So it was reported in the news that back in 2016, the PSF for an EC is around 700 plus. And this year in 2026, which is just 10 years later, the PSF has increased to 1.8K. So for example, Resale at Tampines, this was launched in 2026. The take-up rate was up to 92% at an average about 1.8K PSF. and the demand was really very strong. And there's also Coastal Cabana in Pasir Ris, which sold up to about 67%, and this was around the average of 1.7k PSF. So when you see numbers like this, you can understand the concern of the government. EC are meant to support the housing aspirations for Singaporeans. But if prices keep rising and many buyers are using ECs partly as a 5-year exit strategy, then the policies have to change. And there is one data point that is especially important. From 2021 to 2025, among ECs transacted to the open market, about 75% were sold within 5 years after the MOP. And that was up from 45% over the preceding 5 years. And this is according to CNA. So this tells us something. A lot of owners are exiting soon after fulfilling their MOP. Is it wrong? Not really, but this does affect the market as a whole. And when strong resale gains start to become part of the appeal, the government has to decide whether ECs are drifting too far towards short-term capital gains and away from owner occupation. So that to me is the deeper story. So this is not just about making EC buyers wait longer for 10 years. It is about shifting the EC mindset from buy, wait 5 years, sell for gain, to buy because you genuinely intend to live there for the longer period of at least 10 years. So why does MOP matter so much? The reason this is important because MOP is not just a technical restriction. MOP affects flexibility. It affects your exit plan, it affects whether you can buy another property, it affects whether you can rent out the whole unit, and it affects how long your capital is being tied up to this EC. A 5-year MOP and a 10-year MOP are very different decisions to make. For 5-year MOP, buyers may think, if the market is good at MOP, I can sell, upgrade, or restructure. But with a 10-year MOP in mind, you will start to change the way you think. Can this home serve my family for a much longer period? Will this layout still work? Will the commute still make sense? Let's say you have a kid who is in primary school right now and will be in secondary school right now and will go to a tertiary. So will the school, parents' work, and all these factors come in play still make sense 10 years down the road? And financially, the question is even sharper. Because if you cannot sell, you cannot buy another property, and you cannot rent out the whole unit during the MOP period, you need to be very comfortable with such decision. So this is why I say the EC game has changed. It is no longer just an affordability play, it becomes a long-term owner occupation decision. For some family, that is perfectly fine. For others, especially those who are thinking of using EC as a stepping stone at 5 to 7 years to step forward, this strategy now needs to be reworked. This is where it gets interesting. The new rules will make future ECs feel more restrictive, but in the short term, ECs that are not affected by these measures may become more attractive. So obviously, we are expecting that a lot of buyers are looking forward to these next 5 projects which will not be affected by the measures. And that makes sense. If you're comparing an EC with 5 years MOP compared to a 10-year MOP, which one will be more attractive to you? Which one will be more flexible? At the same time, resale ECs which have already crossed the MOP may become slightly more attractive to certain buyers. Why? Because they already offer the condo lifestyle, larger family-sized units, layouts, without the 10-year MOP period and restriction that applies to these future ECs that are upcoming. But this doesn't mean that all resale ECs will suddenly fly in terms of their prices. Location still matters, entry price still matters, unit layout still matter, and the age still matter, but the future exit is even more important. This policy may increase the attention towards the resale ECs, but the attention alone does not guarantee the value. This is something that the homeowners must understand. So who has the most to gain and who actually benefits from this? It is the first-time buyers. This increased first-timer allocation is clearly designed to benefit the first-time buyers who have aspiration to own an EC. Secondly, current EC owners who are already approaching resale or already in the resale market. These are those who are not affected by the rules. You might gain more attention from buyers who are looking at ECs, but who might miss out because of the attention that they will be receiving for these 5 upcoming ECs. And if they miss those out, they might look into the resale market. And third, HDB upgraders who still appreciates space. Many HDB upgraders are not just chasing prestige. They want a practical family home. They want 3 or 4 bedrooms. They want the facilities. They want better security and something that feels like the next chapter of their house. If resale ECs remain attractively priced compared to the private condos around the area, they can still be attractive. ECs are generally about 20 to 30% lower than the surrounding private condo in the same area. So that's why they have a bigger pool of buyers. Fourth, family who are priced out of new launch condos. I'm talking about the private new launch condos. If the private new launch condo continue to feel heavy for some of these buyers, they might start to look at resale ECs. Because in general, it's still a condominium. You get the facilities, you get all that comes with a private condo, but at a better price. And fifth, owners of ECs in good location, good layout, and rare unit types. Because in a market where buyers are more selective, the better units tend to stand out. But again, not every EC automatically wins. This is where we need to talk about who needs to be careful. So the first group of buyers who needs to be careful are the EC buyers. The 10-year MOP means you are making a longer commitment. So initially, if you are thinking about making an exit after 5 years, this no longer applies. The second group will be the second-time buyer. With more priority and allocation being given to first-time buyers, it might restrict the chance that you get your EC. So some of you might shift your attention towards private condos or even resale ECs. But again, that does not mean that you should rush. The third group is HDB upgraders who already feel like you are stretching. The removal of the DPS, the Deferred Payment Scheme, is crucial. For some HDB upgraders, the DPS removes some of the financial stretch because you don't have to pay for 2 houses at once. Without the DPS, the affected EC buyers will have to start paying the normal payment scheme. Now that makes financial planning all the more important. The next group are the EC sellers. Some sellers may assume that the new rule automatically push their price up. Maybe, maybe not. The buyers still have a lot of alternatives. They can compare resale condos, they can compare new launches, they can wait, they can stay in HDB. So pricing still needs a strategy, and the policy creates a market narrative. But sellers need buyers' conviction. So let's compare the options more practically. Resale EC versus new EC. A resale EC may offer immediate occupation, or it's a known physical product and sometimes a more spacious layout. It has ready hit MOP, so you don't have the restriction of 5 years. And some of the older ECs may be a little aged, so you are facing older facilities and possibly higher renovation needs. A new EC gives you a brand new product, something that is fresh, new facilities, and developer finishing. Nowadays, you have seen the developer finishing for the recent ECs. It's really up to standard. And for future private ECs, the 10-year MOP and the 15 privatisation timeline really change the equation. The key is not to say which one is better. The key is to ask, what is the price gap? What restrictions apply? How long do you intend to hold this property? Who are your future buyers? What lifestyle need am I currently solving? If you are an EC owner, HDB upgrader, or a buyer looking in the current market, there's a framework that I use. First of all, don't just ask whether the EC is cheaper than private condo. Ask whether the difference is enough to justify the age, the restrictions, the location, and your future exit plan. For resale ECs, compare against the private condos in their nearby area. For new ECs, you can compare against upcoming private launches and always look at quantum and not just PSF. Second point is the livability of the condo that you are buying. This is especially important for ECs because many buyers are families. Layout work, are the bedrooms practical, and is the commute acceptable for you to go to work or to school? With a longer MOP, livability becomes a more stronger point that you need to consider because you may be staying longer than you originally planned to. And thirdly, the appeal of this property over the long run. Will future buyers still want this property? Is the project in a location with sustained demand over the long run? What are the transformations happening in this area? And finally, the exit strategy. For any properties, especially ECs, you need to know who your future buyers are. Is it another HDB upgrader, a family priced out of private condo, a buyer who is looking for a space, or someone who is looking for a house near their kids' school or their workplace? So if you cannot identify a future buyer in a house that you're buying, just be careful because it must eventually be sold. You also have to know your affordability safety. Don't just plan based on your maximum affordability. You have to plan it based on a safe affordability. Can you hold the property if the interest rate fluctuates? Can you handle the renovation works? Will you still have your emergency funds? So for HDB upgraders, this is critical. The goal is not just to upgrade, it's to upgrade without turning your home into a financial pressure. Going forward, I would watch a few things. The first thing is the transaction volume for resale ECs. So if more buyers start to shift their focus from the upcoming ECs into a resale EC, you can start to see that the volume and the activity in that particular segment will start to increase. Second will be the price gap between the resale EC and the comparable private condos around. If the gap narrows too much, the buyer will start to wonder whether the resale EC or the private condos make sense. Third, the demand for the upcoming EC launches which are not affected by these measures. And fourth, the EC land bids that are gonna happen from now onwards. Let's see what will happen to the land bid prices after these measures have been announced. Will it start to go lower or will it still go higher? We also have to know whether this affects the HDB upgrader demand. Because if HDB upgraders continue to have strong sale proceeds, they remain an important demand pool for the ECs and mass market projects. And six, affordability. The removal of the DPS and the 10-year MOP both push buyers to think more prudently. So this may be uncomfortable in the short term, but it will be healthier for the market in the long run. So what is the real takeaway here? The EC MOP story is not just about longer restrictions. It is a shift in the way ECs should be viewed. For future affected EC buyers, you should think of it as not just a short stepping stone, it is now a long-term family decision. For existing EC owners, this may create new opportunities, but only if the unit is priced and positioned properly. For HDB upgraders, resale ECs may become more attractive, but they still need to be compared carefully against resale condos, new launches, and the family's financial safety. And for the broader market, this might bring some of the demand to the resale ECs, the upcoming ECs which are not affected by these measures, and the mass market condos. And the main point is, don't react to every headline emotionally. Use the news to sharpen your decision. Whether you're an EC owner approaching your MOP, HDB upgrader considering your next move, or a homeowner who is unsure whether to sell, hold, upgrade, or restructure, this is exactly what a property decision audit can help. We look at your current position, your options, your risks, your affordability for your next move. So don't rush into a transaction, but be sure to have a clearer view before you make any major decision. So if this video has helped you to understand the EC market more clearly, subscribe to the channel, that will help us a lot. And if you want to discuss your own situation, do reach out to me at 9800-6383. I'll see you in the next video.